Bonjour dans les 24 heures d'un même monde. Des grippes, soyons dynamiques. C'est la dernière séance dans laquelle nous avons une audience très large dans la salle et j'espère aussi large online. Donc cette session, on va traiter non pas de l'évolution de la ville mondiale, mais de la santé mondiale et de la circulation donc des technologies en lien avec la santé. Technologies, médicaments, toutes sortes de choses. Et nous avons donc le plaisir d'avoir Mady Barbeitas et Koichi Kameda qui vont faire une présentation à deux voix. Ariadna, Nebot, et Kate Enright qui est online, who is online, and we will do that also. You can do it in English or in French if you want, but I think you prefer English. Huh? Et Yves-Marie Rault-Chodankar qui, je crois, va le parler en français, parce que sinon, dans une langue indienne que je ne comprendrai pas, ça marche.
Everything is possible, but I prefer French.
But you prefer to do it in French.
Great.
So if you really want, I can translate some parts or some basic things. But I propose that we begin in the order that is on the program. So Mady and Koichi, I don't know how you manage between you.
Manage very well. Don't worry.
Play ball. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Rigas. Thank you for GRIP organizers. I just wait to see my slides on the screen. Yes, thank you very much. So, quickly, just a presentation from preliminary results from our field work and our research project in Colombia. So we are talking about health sovereignty in Colombia, the case of Bogotá Bio and Vaxtera, two vaccine manufacturers initiatives in Colombia. The guided question for this presentation is how are health sovereignty policies being implemented in post-pandemic scenario? Could they represent an alternative to the global health system? So a little bit of the context to explain the political momentum of sovereignty policies. First, after the COVID-19 pandemic, most of the countries in Latin America saw the limits of the global health system, the R&D model, because they suffer with a shortage of essential health technologies. So, and then, as you know, Latin America countries rely heavily on imported health technologies, and they imported 6 times more than what they export. Next, thank you. And in Latin America, we have only 5 countries with vaccine production capacity: Argentina, Brazil, Cuba, Mexico, and Nicaragua. And they serve mostly national markets with limited drug and API manufacturing. And these countries, after COVID-19 pandemic, they were able to attract technology transfer partnerships to produce new vaccines, but they actually reinforce the regional inequality. However, in Colombia, after the left-wing president Gustavo Petro and some grassroots activists, they are reforming the healthcare system and start to expand some access to essential technologies, which includes, for example, the 2024 compulsory license for dolutegravir anti-HIV drug.
So as Mady mentioned, we are presenting here the first results of this fieldwork that we conducted in Colombia, and it's actually part of a bigger project that is funded by GRIP about the pharmaceutical R&D models of global South countries, and so in Brazil, Colombia, India, and so we did this field work in Bogotá and Medellin last August, talking to different actors that are involved in vaccine manufacturing. And also to mention that it was also quite interesting as Brazilians to do this fieldwork in Colombia and compare with their the model that they're trying to introduce in Colombia, their own way of looking at vaccine manufacturing in pharmaceutical industry more general. And so as results, and I think it was so interesting, was to see that there are different imaginaries of sovereignty with regards to pharmaceutical production that we see in Colombia. And I mean, Colombia is interesting because they used to have local capacity to manufacture vaccines, but for political decisions, they decided to shut down this industrial plants. And it was during the pandemic, and that's why we decided to talk about it as well. It was during the pandemic that they saw the importance of reinvesting the localization of the vaccine production in the country, so this led to the creation of different initiatives that are current there, and they have completely different pharmaceutical models. So they have a national one that's more public, so based on the public sector, a local one in Bogotá, which is completely different. I'm going to talk a bit later about it, and then a private one that is Vaxtera. And all these different models, they all invoke the notion of health sovereignty as a basis of the model, but it's, so representing different imaginaries around it. And Bogotá Bio, one of these initiatives, is quite interesting because it's so it's a local manufacturing production with the help of China. So it starts early in the pandemic as a proposal of scholars and activists that wanted to establish this vaccine manufacturing initiative in Colombia. They approached the mayor of Bogotá, Claudia Lopez, with the idea, and she completely embraced the initiative. But what they wanted was not to reproduce, for example, the model of Brazil that is quite dominant in the region of looking for public-private partnerships of technology transfer. They wanted to create a company with a partner in order to really assure that there will be vaccines in the markets, not only technology transfer. And so they proposed, but the Bogotá city would still have the control of most of the company, and they approached different companies, and only Chinese companies were interested to join this kind of enterprise. So it's quite interesting as a model.
The second initiative was Vaxtera, a private company founded in 2021 with a huge investment from Sura. It's a health insurance company, and it was the first time that they invested in the manufacturing of vaccines. And they have as a CEO Jorge Osorio, which is also a prestigious investigator and a professor in the Wisconsin University. And we visited the industrial plant at Rio Negro in Medellin, which is a fill and finish facility, and they are also planning some R&D activities, most outside of Colombia, in the US, in Wisconsin University, and a little bit in Colombia. The important thing to mention is that this industry is located in an enterprise zone in Colombia. So it benefits from tax incentives and incentives to import and is free to export any kind of product. They don't have, for now, any vaccines, but they focus on new vaccine platforms. So the portfolio is still secret for us. We didn't have the chance to discover for which disease they are producing these these new vaccines. So we assume there is a society model with, based on the universal vaccine patent for COVID-19 they are issued, and then they will invest in the patents to raise the value of the company after, and then invest in fill and finish for producing vaccines and most for exportation.
Can you do a short conclusion?
Yeah. No, just to finish, actually, is just to say that there are many challenges for this kind of initiatives related to the localization of vaccine manufacturing in Colombia. And really in this idea of, it's really important to have this pharmaceutical sovereignty in the country. And you saw that there were different ways of doing it. That related to national issues, for example, the national politics, but also in relation to the region, in terms of Colombia in the region. So how can they be supported by, for example, authorities in the region, such as the Pan-American Organization, and also in terms of creating their own narrative of Colombia as a producer of vaccines, of their own pharmaceutical model. So,
thank you very much. This is a very interesting case of a production, an intent to do a new production model, and they promote also a new law. So it goes really very profoundly in the structure of the country, the political structure of that. Maybe circulating knowledge is more important than circulating assets. We'll ask that to our two friends. Kate.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I will put with me Kate as well, like this we can speak together. So maybe in order to answer to this question, we're going to present here a small experience that we are doing, because it's an experience, I think, and it's more a kind of a method that we wanted to put in practice. So Kate and me, I'm going to let her introduce herself, but we know each other as a PhD students, and she has already submitted. I'm not yet done, but we have got this support from GRIP to develop a series of podcasts together. The idea was to interview pharmacists, ideally, to explain. So in a way to humanize the policies of access to medicines that we already know, that we have a lot listened to that when you're working in the global health infrastructure in a way. And because also trying to answer to this large question, how has changed globalization over the past 25 years in terms of medicines and health technologies and knowledge about pharmaceutical systems has changed a lot. And this acceleration made like a big response at international level with the policies of access. And Kate and me, as a pharmacist, that we are, both of us, we are pharmacists, we wanted to, in a way, put in the front the life experiences from a professional point of view, how the pharmacists are living this situation of non-circulating medicines. It doesn't matter where they are. So we are trying to interview people from different situating them, so from different regions, and trying to let them explain a bit, put this nexus that they do between the object and the patient, and depending where they are and in the system, we try to collect more micro level experiences, how these pharmacists are confronting that when they are in front of the patient, and putting that in connection with more macro level pharmacists in a way, because they are more in the health system, at more top in the health system, let's say. So we try to do some episodes based on that. Maybe you have a question, Rigas, and then Kate can explain something as well.
Yes, I was wondering, do you have also in your sample of persons you interview, pharmacists that are industrial pharmacists?
Kate, you want to take this question and then you can introduce yourself as well?
Thank you very much. And thank you for hosting this and staying around so late in the evening. What a great initiative. And thank you, Ariadna, for the great introduction as well. With industrial pharmacists, we have individuals who are working in research and development, so industry adjacent, I suppose. They're working for DNDi, an organization, an NGO, obviously, that's interested in improving access to neglected medicines. So as Ariadna explained, we are interested in speaking with pharmacists because they are at the nexus between the patient and the supply chain. So they give us this perfect understanding of what is happening to both the patient and the impact of lack of access, but also with insights into the problems that might be arising in the supply chain. And we're speaking to the NDI who work in research and development, but also in implementing programs. We've spoken to those who work in regulatory affairs, someone who's working in advocacy for access to medicines, a researcher who was previously a pharmacist working in Syria, about his experiences there. We're speaking to a supply chain specialist in Bangladesh who has experience of trying to improve supply chains for humanitarian action. And someone who is a legal representative who is interested in intellectual property. And I think one of the things that both Ariadna and I enjoy, because we are both pharmacists, is also being able to showcase the wonderful variety that you can have in the role of the pharmacist and how it is a touchstone on every single part of the value chain in access to medicines.
Yeah, and maybe if I can just connect one last thing with the previous presentation from Mady and Koichi, I would say that, well, we are not asking about the sovereignty, like it's not a direct question that we are putting, but I don't know what you think, Kate, but in these interviews what I see is that when you try to, in a way, decompose data, so deconstruct a bit what is the access, policy access, how they understand that and how they are implementing that and how they are putting that in their own context, because as we say, people that are working global health organizations, they come from something. So they have been previously working in their own systems. They come at some point maybe has already been in industry and then jumped to the global health institutions. So in a way, they have to, they are explaining us a bit this sovereignty as in the way that they understand and they can implement it. For example, I remember one interview that, because has not been yet posted, but the boy from Syria, he was saying, well, I was taught as a pharmacist in a country that there are no medicines and that there are no places to give the medicine. So in a way, the profession itself has another meaning. So this kind of, I think this kind of conversation allows us to also to question this aspect of sovereignty from a professional point of view in a way. I don't know what if you share that with me, Kate, maybe is a thought that I had now.
Yeah,
do you
have
Kate, do you have in your sample pharmacists that are specialized or working into international organizations and see themselves as being more useful into an international organization or an NGO or an international NGO like Médecins du Monde or NSO or MSF? Or do you have any of these cases?
We have one individual who's working for an INGO. He's a pharmacist in Bangladesh and has historically worked in different NGOs in Bangladesh. He's just finished his master's in business management. We're actually speaking with him later this week. But we were keen to gather professionals from different walks of life. So we are trying to draw from pharmacists who work in, have different backgrounds of careers, because one of the key things that we're hoping to highlight with this project is representing the global via the individual. So obviously pharmaceutical supply chains and their systems and the way in which finances revolve around the world is an incredibly globalized system. And if you think about where manufacturers are based and where individual patients are based, it can't not be a global system. And yet to really grasp the impact of when that circulation ceases, we felt like we need more human stories and we really need to focus on the individuals. We felt like it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate from an ethics point of view to be interviewing patients, but we were keen to speak to pharmacists. And so really we're drawing on individuals from as many different walks of life as possible with as many different career backgrounds, different understandings and experiences of their own in various sectors of the pharmaceutical system to really gather those human stories and showcase, well, this is what happens when medicines cease to circulate. And this can be the professional challenges and ethical issues that those individuals can face. So yes, sorry, a long answer to your question, but yes, we do have one individual from a humanitarian background, but we're trying to draw on a wide different pool.
Okay.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you very much.
Stay a moment with us.
Stay tuned. We continue in French, but we'll switch back to you.
Merci.
Yves-Marie Rault-Chodankar, tu voulais plutôt intervenir en français?
Yes, very sorry from my English-speaking fellows who are online. I don't know how many of you are online, but I would prefer to speak in my mother tongue, if you don't mind, which is French. So I'll switch to French and maybe we can then have a conversation in English.
Okay, thank you.
Est-ce que c'est possible de mettre la présentation? Ouais. Ok. Donc, je vais prendre le... Donc, alors, à part peut-être les pharmaciens interrogés par Ariadna et Kate, et évidemment les chercheurs comme Koichi et Mady, peu de gens s'intéressent à l'origine de nos médicaments. En l'occurrence, une grande partie d'entre eux vient d'Inde, et le Covid-19, et c'était un peu mon accroche comme vous l'avez fait tout à l'heure, nous a révélé qu'en fait, de nombreux médicaments étaient originaires de Chine ou d'Inde quand on s'est aperçu qu'on n'avait plus de paracétamol dans les officines ou d'amoxicilline aujourd'hui. Et puis, que sais-je, enfin, toutes les semaines, il y a de nouvelles pénuries qui se font jour en Europe et dans d'autres pays occidentaux. Alors, on oublie aussi les pays du Sud, évidemment. Il y a aussi des pénuries qui se font jour hors crise. En effet, depuis 25 ans et de mondialisation, la géographie pharmaceutique a bien changé. Et ce que je voudrais montrer dans cette présentation, c'est que l'Inde joue un rôle de plus en plus important. Alors l'Inde est avec d'autres pays des Sud, et notamment la Chine, le Mexique, la Turquie, le Brésil. Alors, avec quelques nuances, puisque le Brésil et le Mexique ont une place qui a quelque part diminué dans la part des exportations en valeur, quand l'Inde est aujourd'hui devenue le 11e exportateur mondial. Donc effectivement, on connaît bien l'Inde comme la pharmacie du monde en développement, qui aurait démocratisé l'accès aux médicaments. Donc on le sait au moins depuis le début du 21e siècle, avec la fameuse controverse où le médicament contre le sida a été développé par une firme américaine. Et l'entreprise Cipla, la plus grande entreprise, une des plus grandes entreprises indiennes la plus connue, a produit le même médicament pour 100 fois moins cher, sauvant des millions de vies à travers les pays du Sud. L'Afrique du Sud statuant en faveur de ce pays pour que le médicament puisse y être distribué, au détriment évidemment de la loi sur les brevets internationaux. Alors je ne vais pas insister sur la chronologie du développement de l'industrie pharmaceutique indienne, mais effectivement on est pendant longtemps... Alors voilà, cette slide c'est pour montrer que mon terrain se base quand même sur ce que je vais vous présenter se base quand même sur un gros travail d'enquête, puisque depuis 2015, j'ai mené une centaine d'entretiens avec des chefs d'entreprise en Inde, des cadres, aujourd'hui beaucoup de cadres de R&D, et des terrains exploratoires, notamment un au Brésil financé par le GRIP, et en Afrique du Sud également. Donc l'idée c'est de montrer que l'Inde est vraiment montée en puissance. Alors avec l'indépendance, effectivement l'Inde s'est refermée, s'est découplée des chaînes de valeur mondiales pendant longtemps, ce qui lui a permis de développer son industrie pharmaceutique avec un moment crucial, c'est la mise en place du Patent Act, qui est une loi sur les brevets, qui place le brevet justement non plus sur le produit, mais sur les processus. Et ça va permettre à tout un tas d'entreprises de se développer très rapidement, justement sans avoir à respecter les règles du brevet. Alors ce qui se passe dans les années 90, c'est que justement ces entreprises commencent à être grosses, veulent sortir du territoire, et elles demandent, enfin les plus grosses d'entre elles, demandent au gouvernement, elles ont vraiment l'oreille attentive du gouvernement, d'adhérer aux accords des droits de propriété intellectuelle et du commerce, qui en fait remettent les brevets sur les produits. Ils sont actifs en 2005 et l'Inde se recoupe aux chaînes de valeur mondiale et devient un acteur, et va devenir un acteur plus important à l'échelle mondiale. Alors, on parle de l'Inde comme pharmacie du monde en développement, mais en réalité, l'Inde exporte à la fois au sud comme au nord. Donc, ce petit diagramme montre qu'en fait, 37% des exportations indiennes vont en Amérique du Nord. Alors, il y a des chiffres qui disent que 70% des génériques consommés en Amérique du Nord sont des génériques originaires d'Inde. En Europe de l'Ouest, c'est 17% des exportations indiennes, l'Afrique subsaharienne, 17% également. Mais alors, il y a des chiffres qui sont encore plus frappants. Alors, je ne vais pas vous assommer non plus avec des chiffres, mais pour montrer un peu les dépendances, les médicaments indiens, c'est 81% des médicaments consommés au Nigeria, 64% des médicaments consommés au Népal. Donc l'Inde joue un rôle de plus en plus important, y compris dans les Suds. Alors, au-delà de cette success story, puisque l'idée de ma présentation, c'était un peu de montrer que finalement, et en écho aussi avec leur présentation de Mady et Koichi, est-ce que cette souveraineté pharmaceutique, qui est de plus en plus souhaitée, notamment depuis le Covid, est vraiment en fait souhaitable? Et ce qu'on voit en Inde, c'est qu'il y a quand même une face un peu cachée de cette production de médicaments que les pays occidentaux, qui souhaiteraient aujourd'hui relocaliser les chaînes de valeur pour accéder à une sorte de souveraineté pharmaceutique ou d'autonomie de la production, cache en fait des coûts. Il faudra qu'évidemment que le consommateur français accepte de payer plus cher son médicament, puisqu'aujourd'hui on a des coûts qui sont très cachés et qui sont des coûts liés à la pollution. Alors là, je vous montre la ville de Mady en Himachal Pradesh, où j'ai commencé à faire un petit peu de terrain récemment. Vous avez 3120 usines. Qui a explosé dans la période, une ville qui a explosé dans la période récente, qui est aujourd'hui vraiment en surchauffe, avec 40 000 ouvriers pharmaceutiques ici sont installés, et des infrastructures de retraitement des déchets qui sont en fait incapables de traiter la quantité d'effluents, donc elles arrivent soit par camion, soit par ici canalisation, dans cette centrale qui est en fait une centrale qui n'est pas capable de traiter l'intégralité des déchets liquides originaires de ces firmes. Donc, tout ça pour dire que quand on parle de souveraineté pharmaceutique, finalement, il faut aussi voir que pour relocaliser les productions, il faudra aussi relocaliser les pollutions. Et ça, c'est un enjeu, à mon avis, central, qui nous permet de questionner quand même ce concept de souveraineté pharmaceutique, qu'on entend de plus en plus cette petite musique depuis effectivement la Covid, mais on peut se poser la question, et je la pose à vous tous qui travaillez, toi sur les médicaments, les pharmaciens, qui effectivement voudraient avoir un approvisionnement sécure et stable. Est-ce qu'on est capable aujourd'hui, après la mondialisation qui justement nous a permis, en mettant en place des chaînes de valeur complexes, avec des spécialisations productives dans chaque pays, une main-d'œuvre peu chère qui nous permet d'avoir des médicaments accessibles. Est-ce que c'est souhaitable et est-ce que c'est même faisable de aujourd'hui reproduire dans un environnement plus régional? Donc on parle effectivement de friendshoring ou de reshoring, c'est-à-dire on ne pense pas complètement rapatrier la production des médicaments à l'intérieur d'un pays, mais pays voisins, pays amis. Donc aujourd'hui, on parle de souveraineté pharmaceutique à l'échelle de l'Europe, comme l'avait annoncé justement Emmanuel Macron à l'issue de toutes les pénuries du Covid. Donc quelle échelle de souveraineté? Ça, c'est une question. Et puis souveraineté pour qui? Parce que quand on voit, les entretiens en Colombie, vous avez un certain nombre d'acteurs privés. Donc souveraineté de qui? Souveraineté, même si la production est relocalisée en Colombie ou au Brésil, est-ce que c'est la souveraineté des acteurs privés? Parce que les Indiens, quand il y a eu les pénuries de vaccins, la firme Serum Institute of India n'était pas forcément tout de suite prêt à approvisionner le marché indien. Ces entreprises capitalistes, privées, qui en fait désirent avant tout vendre au plus offrant. Ce sont des entreprises donc à but lucratif. Relocaliser les productions, ça ne voudrait pas forcément dire assurer la souveraineté en termes d'accès pharmaceutique aux populations locales. Et ça, je pense qu'il y a vraiment une grosse différence, tout un travail de réflexion à mener autour de ça, puisque la souveraineté qui se construit aujourd'hui, et on a vu avec l'affaire du Doliprane, par exemple, où lorsque l'entreprise américaine a voulu racheter la filiale produisant des génériques à Sanofi, tout le monde politique et les patients ont crié « Oh là, attention !» alors qu'en réalité, cette entreprise ne produit pas le principe actif du paracétamol, qui est le paraméthanol, qui est produit lui-même en Chine, dont l'Inde est aussi dépendante. Donc il faut aussi repenser les flux entre les Suds, parce que en réalité on a tendance à les uniformiser, mais l'Inde est également dépendante de la Chine. Donc il faut repenser tout ça dans toute la complexité en fait de cette chaîne d'approvisionnement qu'on étudie depuis longtemps et qui existe grâce à la mondialisation, qui a produit les médicaments grâce à la mondialisation. Est-ce que cette démondialisation, cette souveraineté pharmaceutique qu'on l'appelle, serait capable aussi de nous permettre d'accéder à tous les médicaments qu'on consomme aujourd'hui?
So at least two different questions on sovereignty, which is a very good way to introduce the debate. One which is the scale, has to do with the scale. Is the sovereignty at the level of a country or a region or a group of countries? And a second question which can be if sovereignty really is the good means in order to have a good provision of medicines to the local populations in the countries that are supposed to have this. I think Colombia had an answer to that, even if it's a very political one, isn't that?
Yeah, we saw actually that the health sovereignty is most political banner, I would say, because it's impossible to be like completely independent or sovereign in the pharmaceutical production. We are always depend on other countries for small things or for API, as you mentioned, in India, from China, India. But at least I would say that PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, could have a more a role more active in distribute more this kind of, and because they have the power to concentrate the purchase power in the region, in Latin America region, to and drop the price and have more access to medicines for each different countries in Latin America. So it could also, and then they had this discussion right now, it's an actual discussion to really promote the sovereignty, not the sovereignty, but at least some industrial park you can add, Koichi.
Just to add that it's true that there is being this concept sovereignty, industrial sovereignty, is being everywhere in Europe. I mean, very present now. But the thing is also about the model of the localization. For me, that's the thing. And Colombia, and in case of Colombia, so interesting. That's why we presented these 3 different initiatives to show that it can, I mean, this concept can be evoked by all of them, but they are not really promoting, as you mentioned, sovereignty. And so the thing is, if this model is really interested about access to the population, and I think so the thing is, now we're also talking more about public production, and so public in a large sense. I mean, in the sense of what kind of model of pharmaceutical production that we want. And I think the debate is more about that than just producing locally, because you see that you can just localize the fill and finish steps, right? Just, I mean, and in the end, is not really promoting something different for the population, right?
But can I ask a question? Maybe the pharmacists can answer it. With the example, for example, of the pharmacist that you interviewed, Kate maybe could answer for that, who works for DNDi. DNDi, I have the impression in the discussion that you have that patents are not so much important anymore. Okay, so I want your take on the role of patents and how it's structural into the, or not. And maybe to begin with the life story of the guy who's in DNDi, who's in Bangladesh, I think, no? Or was it? No, it was another one, yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we haven't spoken to DNDi. They're lined up for a couple of weeks' time, so I'm not sure I can offer that story. And Ariadna, you've been in...
They are coming.
They are coming, yeah. You're in touch with them, so maybe you can fill in from that point of view. Yeah, Ariadna, I can see you're waiting to speak to one too.
No, I just want to understand final. You can finish the question. So, why do you think that?
I think I'm not. I had the impression, but maybe because of the short time we had in presenting, that property rights and patenting rights on the product were less important into this process of growth of a large industry in southern countries than it was at some years ago. Let's say some 20 years ago.
May I? Well, I can let you to share then. But from my point of view, I cannot say that. I would not say that they are not important anymore, the patents. But it's true that, as you have presented, I think they are much more challenges so they are much more problematic that are attached to the fact that we cannot ensure a circulation in the good scale, let's say, about medicine. So I think when you are speaking about environmental questions, this is the truth. So we know that the relocalization, the local production speech is very connected to which country wants to accept to have these 3,000 industries producing medicines in his own space. So nobody wants that, and that's the reality why we don't have this circulation in the good model or in the good manner in a way. But for example, if I would answer from pharmacy, so that's why it starts, at least my PhD, and I think Kate, her PhD is more about ethics and the dilemma between when pharmacies are in the ground and how they deal with the quality. But in a way, the aspects of quality, the risk of this supply chain at global level is very connected to which is the role of this professional in a way. So the pharmacist is supposed to be this nexus that we are defending, but the reality is that you are very far away from this origin from the medicine. So the pharmacist and the manufacturer are so disconnected because we know that there are all these sub-scale, so sub-levels. And in a way, this for me is almost an existential question that I put to the profession, and this is connected to this circulation situation. This 25 years of changing of this panorama of the circulation. I don't know if you, Kate, you want to answer to complement with something.
Yeah, just as you're speaking, and I think it's a very interesting question. I think that I would love to hear what the final speaker has to say about it, given that you were. I mean, I didn't catch all of it because my French isn't so great, but in terms of the question of how important are patents for a localization agenda, but I would imagine, in my experience, patents are still incredibly important, and it drives industry, it drives what is researched, it drives where can industries make money. And so with a localization agenda, where that manufacturing is taking place, I wonder whether, and I expect perhaps that it is where permissions have been granted, but there's still patents at the back that they still exist. Perhaps they've been waived, perhaps they've been granted, but they're still there and they're still controlling what is permitted to be created and manufactured and researched and reach the final individual. It's still a very broken system from my experience, but I would love to hear what the final speaker has to say on it.
Very good. Yves-Marie.
No, but absolutely, I think it's a misconception that in the global south, a lot of generics are produced, patents don't matter. But actually, so we did with a colleague, Niels Graber, a fieldwork in Brazil that was funded by the GRIP. And we worked on the biosimilar industry in Brazil. So biosimilars are supposedly generics of biotechnological drugs, biopharmaceuticals, so based on living cells. And what we realized is that what was transferred to the Brazilian laboratories, so there is a very specific system of transfer in Brazil involving a private lab, a public lab, and a multinational company generally. And actually, in what was transferred, there was a lot of things that were patented. Sometimes, actually, it was a patented drug. that was transferred, that was licensed to the Brazilian company. But sometimes it was biosimilar drugs, so drugs that were off patent, and within that process, a lot of the equipment was processed. Just an example, but the filter that is used to produce certain drugs was patent, and to be able to have the authorization on the market, there was still a patent on the filter, and they could not use the filter, so they had to source the filter from the company which has patented the product. And there is, and actually the Global South, it's true that it's not produced a lot of breakthrough innovations in the last 25 years, even though we can say a lot of things about the rise of innovation in emerging countries. The blockbuster drugs, the new biotechnologies are still from the north, and they actually don't really want to repeat the story of generics. And that's what, for example, pushed Biocon, an Indian company, and the CIM, which is a Cuban laboratory, to do a partnership, because Biocon was not able to get any technology transfer from the multinational companies by fear that they would reproduce the story of generics. And they dream of playing the patent game, actually. In one of their dreams, they really want to be put back on the map, like, for example, Anne Pollock shows in studying the South African scientists. They also want to create innovations, and they want to play the patent games. And it's been a long time, by the way, that the Cubans have been doing it. They've actually patented a lot of things, which are patented, but do not become blockbusters, because they have a lot of hindrances, and they have to draw on Indian companies or Canadian companies or today US companies to put their product on the market, because they don't have the financial power also to put their patented product on the market. So patent is one thing, but financial resources is one other thing to create a blockbuster drug.
So apart from patenting, one could add that in the countries that once were called developing country economies and now are called Global South as a generic term, something else is happening which is not related to to having breakthrough innovations, but to have a larger production capacity based on a stronger technological learning in processes, in copying, in having better knowledge of the marketing process, of having a better knowledge of what's the market in their own region, at least, or at the regional level. Is that true? Is that what happens?
Well, at least I think from my experience, and I was at that for example, neglect tropical disease, which was one of the diseases that the NDI the organization you mentioned, the NDI, is working on. At least for this disease, the patent is not a problem anymore. But what I see when I was working with these diseases in Brazil and in Colombia as well, the roadblock for producing these diseases are mostly political, because they are not really profitable diseases. So if the government is absent, the local industrial, and they don't guarantee to purchase the products that are out of patents, so we don't have these products because no one is interested to produce. Then you have really to have public laboratories or even the government pushing to produce these drugs, because they are sometimes so simple to produce. It's not a high technology drug. It's just we have the capacity to produce, but don't have the political will to push the industrial firms to produce.
But then, as we know from the example of Mozambique and the famous example of Mozambique trying to do the ARV industry and finally producing aspirin, it's very difficult to get the production level, even if you have the political will to do it.
Yeah. No, I just want to comment that because I think it's actually related to what Yves had mentioned before about, it's also about sovereignty, right? This discourse of sovereignty. And I think actually the political will is not the only thing, it's not enough, but it's still, I think, maybe the start. Because it's really important and is also about, so it requires really long-standing commitments, also in terms of creating a real industrial policy for health specifically. And I think one thing about this different, for example, from India and Brazil is that India has this very strong industry that's not necessarily taking into consideration the needs of the population. So access is quite divided, right, separated from the industrial capacity. While, for example, in the case of Brazil, as I did a lot of fieldwork on that country, is interesting as they try to really connect both and really create a healthcare industrial policy. Of trying to produce locally what is needed by the healthcare system. And so even though they're still very dependent on importation of technologies, I think they are able to create a model, or they use this public purchase power to try to kind of manage the asymmetric power with the big pharma, and try, for example, to negotiate cheaper prices of drugs, or even, for example, to oblige the companies to engage in partnerships to transfer technologies and kind of have control over the technologies, or how they, the technologies they're consuming in a way that is not only about consumption, but also having something that is transferred and staying in the country.
Yes. Maybe I just wanted to add that from my experience, and also maybe more, not only with the experience that we have with the podcast, but with the experiences that Kate and me we have shared through this PhD process, and the experiences that we have had before working in the global health organizations. I would say that what you are explaining at the country level, for me, it happens as well in the global health organizations. There are, we can see the same model in a way, and I'm going to explain why. Because for me, they are very clear the two kind of organizations. The ones that have, it's not the political will, but they have the weight. So they have the money, and they are the big organizations. So the Global Fund and MSF is not even the big one. It's just the PPP ones that they can go and really decide that they are going to be able to have access to all these medicines that they want, to negotiate to the manufacturers, to have the information to what kind of products they have. And the other NGOs, they are organizations that they are very small ones, and they are at the same level than a local distributor. So they have no any space to negotiate and to have importance there, to have access to the same medicines and to decide what is important for them to acquire or what not. So for me, it's interesting just as a reflection that what we see in the global health organizations is, for me, is a replication of what happens at country level. Yes, yes, and not the other way around. They are not there to explain us another model to do. They are doing the same. I don't know if
so global organizations are clones in terms of policy making of what national policies are trying to do.
For me, so yes, there are two BTS, no? Two rhythms as well. Yes.
It's an hypothesis.
Yes, for me, yes, but well, maybe.
Good, that's excellent food for thought. Yes, Yves-Marie.
Just to continue on that, and I think, yes, if we think about global health, we really need a global approach to diseases, because what we can see, there are still very strong asymmetries between the north and the south, and the pharmacists and the patients of the north have a very strong role in the direction where the innovation and the production of the global south is going. Because if I take the firm Biocon, which is the biggest biotechnological firm in India, they have tried to innovate and develop biosimilars for Indian patients, but there was no market because biosimilars and biotechnological drugs are meant for cancers, for all people diseases, rich people diseases, lifestyle diseases, which are mainly in the global north, where people have money to pay, where there are insurance systems in place. So we can see how that globalization plays eventually. The consumptions and the pattern of consumptions in the north have a very strong influence in what is produced in the south still, even if sometimes we are afraid that we don't have enough paracetamol to cure ourselves. Still the asymmetry is in favor, I think, of those people who have money to pay for their treatments.
I think that's a very good way to end this session, because we need to close the session in the room, but the online sessions will follow up just now. And thank you very much for being here, for doing these very interesting presentations. And we'll follow up with global health, production, and all these issues in the next century.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Kate.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Kate, for being here also online.